But I remember one time, this is also in Raleigh, someone coming in to see the news director, and it was me. And I went out to greet him in the lobby. And I said, I can't remember the person's name, Mr. So and so, welcome to the station. And my secretary, that was when we had secretaries, my secretary was right behind me. And he said, thank you very much. I'll take a cup of coffee. And my secretary stepped in very quickly and she took his coat or whatever, and she said, "Mr. So and so, I'll be happy to get you a cup of coffee." And you could have bought him for a dime. You could have bought him for 5 cents, because he was just like,
Couldn't hide it. Couldn't
yeah,
even hide it.
mm-mm, no.
Ah. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lived Experience podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tamea Ryan, and today I am joined by Constance Howard, a successful executive coach dedicated to empowering professional women to overcome self-limiting beliefs, doubt, and imposter syndrome so they can truly live the lives they dream of living. Before executive coaching, Constance spent 40 years as a broadcast news journalist and executive working all over the country, winning 4 Emmy Awards for her work as executive producer for the NBC station in DC. But despite these impressive accomplishments, Constance still faced many personal and professional challenges that are similar to what many other accomplished women endure, such as self doubt and fear of just navigating life. Today's conversation focuses on an often overlooked aspect of grief and loss, how it reshapes our identity. Through Constance Howard's executive coaching, Constance helps women who have experienced loss, whether through death, career changes, divorce, or other life transitions. Thank you so much, Constance, for being here today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and to talk about how our life changes really impact our identity and your experiences with overcoming challenges and how you help support women as well. So, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Yes, yes. And I like to jump right in. And I know you have so many stories to share with us today. You've had a really extensive career in journalism,
Mm,
winning awards, and from the outside, and it is just a successful life. But
mm.
despite that, what are some of the struggles that were happening beneath the surface that others might not have seen?
Well, I think that, when I think about my career, I think at the very beginning, I was a badass. Like I
Hmm.
was a badass. I was going to, climb that ladder and, achieve my goals. And I came from a very small town. So I wanted to shake the dust off of that town and I wanted to live the big life. And so I was eager to take a risk. I was eager to, my first job was in Ames, Iowa. I was okay with going there, right?
Right.
And then as I got success, that changed the equation because then I had something that I didn't wanna lose, right?
Hmm.
And, I'm gonna date myself here. I got into the business when there were not many African Americans. If there was one, that one had to leave before another was hired.
Mhm.
And I ended up one of 4 Black news directors in the country at one point.
Wow.
And so, I there was just an identity crisis. I had to wear a mask at work. I
Mhm.
had to be what would be acceptable. That badass was like, okay, you need to sit down.
Right.
We need to play the game in order to make impact. And so there were times when I was just, I looked one way on the outside, but inside there was just so much anxiety and so much fear that I was gonna make a mistake, you know,
Mhm.
that some station, the competition was gonna have something I didn't have, and how would I explain it? How would I recover? And a lot of times, I was working with or heading up teams of mostly white, colleagues.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, there were times when I felt like if you failed, they wouldn't have minded so much, right?
Right.
So everybody wasn't in there going, "Yeah, let's work for the team."
Uh-huh.
Everybody was kinda in it, um, and being a little bit resentful that I was the one heading up the team, right? No matter how much the success. They enjoyed the success, but then when there was a failure, it was like my failure. What's that saying that success has 1,000 parents, but defeat
Mhm.
is an orphan?
Yeah. Oh, that thank you for sharing that, and I just was nodding my head because I can relate, and I'm
Mhm,
sure many, women of color, men of color, especially those in leadership positions, can to relate to that experience of really, like, having to wear this representative and
mhm,
always feeling like you have to be on
mhm,
100% all the time,
mhm.
everyone's watching, and how tiring that is. And so while you were working through your journey and gaining this experience, you're still struggling with, am I going to be enough?
Mhm,
What if I make
mhm.
a mistake? How did you navigate that sort of that continuum of these highs of being so happy of all that you accomplished, but then on the other side, what was going on behind the scenes?
I don't think I ever really enjoyed my highs.
Mm,
You know, like I won 4 Emmys, and
yeah,
every day I went in, it was like, "Yeah, that was nice," but, I knew I had to perform. So I didn't have time to really stop and enjoy it, and,
mhm,
I also had to make sure that the team felt like I was very inclusive and I was giving everybody else their props and not
right.
being the I,
Mhm.
um, and so I think what happens is you put your head down and you keep working, because you're only as good as what you have done, right? So every
Mhm.
morning at 7:30, this happened in DC, every morning at 7:30, the numbers, the ratings came
Mm,
out.
okay.
If the ratings were great, mazel tov, right? If the ratings were not good, then okay, okay, you had a bad day.
Yeah.
You better not have 2 bad days, 3 bad days.
Mhm.
If you did, I had to have an explanation. I had to
Wow.
be able to say, "Listen, I've analyzed the audience flow and, blah, blah, blah." It was a tap dance, but every day that happened, so you really didn't have time to, um to really enjoy your highs the way other people did.
Yeah.
I remember people coming in and numbers being really good. Um, there was a time, well, when I was there, that morning show, that morning block, uh,
Uh-huh.
pumped out millions, I'll say, of dollars. It pumped out the money that was operating money for the rest of the station because people were watching news in the morning, they're not staying up late, so that's where
Uh-huh.
advertisers would go. And I remember anchors going, "I sent these numbers to my agent," you know?
Yeah.
Way to go. But I couldn't take the time, Inside me was like, "Yeah, great for the team," but inside me was like, "What if I can't keep this going? What if I
Mm.
slip up? What if something happens? What if I don't get there? What if it's always the what if, that kind of second guessing yourself, which is all about the imposter syndrome. You look one way on the outside, but inside you're,
Uh-huh.
all these emotions are going. And so part of the imposter syndrome is, you could be a procrastinator, or you could be, a perfectionist. And I was all of the things, um,
Yeah.
without even knowing it. I had all of the symptoms, but I didn't know at the time. If somebody had said, you have the imposter syndrome, I would have been like, no,
Right.
absolutely not. So
Mhm.
then I would have said, well, what is it? Wait a
I
minute,
don't
what
have
is it? Yeah, privately, I would have said, let me look this up."
it.
But outwardly, I would never, want you to know that there was a chink in the armor.
Right. And we're going to get more into the imposter syndrome and how you help women who have that challenge, but take us back to that vision of becoming a journalist. Was this something that you always aspired? And on the flip side of that, did it end up looking different than what you anticipated?
I went to college to be a speech therapist.
Okay.
And, you get to your junior year and you have to do the practices and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
so I went to a practice and the young kid couldn't say vacation. He kept saying "vacation." And I
Okay.
spent an hour going ba 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 ba. And I went back to my dorm and I said, "I can't do this. I really
Yeah.
cannot do this. So
Yeah.
let's, what am I gonna do?" Right? And, one of my friends said, "Well, what about news?" And I said, "Well, what what do I do?" And "Do I write the stuff?" And they were like, "Oh god, no, not you. No.
Yeah.
You just sit there and talk." And so I thought, "Okay," but once the bug bit me, I
Mhm.
was I didn't wanna do anything else, and I didn't wanna think about anything else, and I was off to the races, you know?
Yeah.
And I loved it. But what I discovered when I was that I was not a very good reporter. I
Okay.
just wasn't a good reporter. I wasn't good in the sense that that was the time when people started going live, and I
Mhm.
would get consumed with nerves, and I couldn't get it out, And so I realized that that was not going to be my ticket back home, and my home was New York, upstate New
Okay.
York, and so I knew that was gonna be my ticket, so I went into producing, and producing was like, I was
Yeah.
excellent at it, and I could put shows together, and, they gave me, the weekend newscast. And I mean,
Mhm.
I'd come in early morning, I'd work all day to put this newscast on. I just absolutely loved it. And that's how I started to make my way up in TV news. And the ironic thing was, I was in the South, I was in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I
Okay.
remember when the news director had left, and I had applied, um, and I remember overhearing some of the workers say they're never gonna give it to a Black person,
Ugh.
and, they gave it to me.
Yeah. And when you think back to that moment, how did that make you feel? Like knowing that I'm guessing that wasn't your first experience with people doubting you,
No.
but it now was becoming like real life. It's like, okay.
Mhm.
How did you feel about that? And did you become desensitized to it over time?
Yes, yes. I had to,
Mhm.
because what was I going to do? What was I going to do? That was my job, right? And
Yeah.
so what I did, which a lot of professional women do, a lot of successful women do, I know you're going to identify with this. You work
Mhm.
harder, you
Yes.
work longer,
Mhm.
because you're proving them wrong, right?
Right.
And so you're always trying to anticipate what somebody else is going to think.
Mhm.
Thinking, right, inside you're thinking that somehow you can change how they view you or how they view your people or whatever,
Right.
and that doesn't happen.
No.
That rarely happens. But
Mhm.
I remember one time, this is also in Raleigh, someone coming in to see the news director, and it was me, and, I went out to greet him in the lobby, and, I said I can't remember the person's name, "Mr. So and so, welcome to, the station." And my
Mhm.
secretary, that was when we had secretaries, my secretary was right behind me, and, he said, "Thank you very much. I'll take a cup of coffee." And, my secretary stepped in very quickly, and she took his coat or whatever, and she said, "Mr. So and so, I'll be happy to get you a cup of coffee." And you could have bought him for a dime. You could have
Ugh,
bought him for 5 cents, because he was just like, you
couldn't
know
hide it. Couldn't
no,
even hide it.
mm-mm, no.
Ugh. And, in your work now, and we're going to get deeper into the work that you're doing now, but you brought up imposter syndrome. Can you give a definition of what that means to you? And also, how do you help women who are navigating that?
So the imposter syndrome is your inability to accept your success and achievements and accomplishments because you worked hard, because you have
Mhm.
talent, because you have skills, because you're smart. Inside, you think, "Wow, it's just lucky," or,
Mm.
"It's the team. It's not me."
Right.
And I think one day they're gonna figure out that I'm not as smart as they
Mhm.
think I am. And the crazy thing about this is that you would be shocked of all the women, and men have it too, but women have it more than men, who
Mhm.
suffer from this. Michelle Obama talks about it. She talks about why am I getting all of this attention, right?
Right.
And we love her. We like, "Oh my gosh, Michelle Obama," but inside
Yeah.
she has said that I felt like, "Why me?"
Mm.
Maya Angelou has said, "Listen, I've written 11 books, but I'm always thinking that the gig is up.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna discover," right? So it's that inability to accept that you are smart, that you are very talented, and that you have something to offer.
Mhm.
And so there are ways that you can spot it. As I said earlier, some of us are procrastinators. You wait until the very last minute to start something.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't go right, you can say, "Okay, well, I didn't have time." You're looking for
Right.
that. Some of us are perfectionists. Like we can't seem to let something go. You want everything to line up before you can pull the trigger. You're
Mhm.
always tinkering with it. You gotta be a solo actor is another example. You don't want anybody to help you. You're just gonna do it alone. You have to be
Mhm.
the expert on everything. You don't wanna ask anyone for, help, and you have to have the answers for everything. And sometimes, I mean, we can be all of those things, and we could be just one of those things. There's usually 1 or 2 dominant things that really present themselves. Um,
Mhm.
and so when I talk with women, right, because we really don't ever recognize that term, the imposter syndrome, but if I
Right.
say to you, "Hey, if you walk into a room and you look around and you think, wow, everybody else looks smarter than me, I'm just gonna sit back here and I'm gonna take some notes and I'm just gonna, I'm
Mhm.
gonna amen the chorus over there and
Right.
just gonna play small." You play small. And I don't think women realize um, how the imposter syndrome manifests itself in their life. They think, "Well, this is the way I've always been." Or
Right.
they think, "This has worked for me in the past," right?
Mhm.
Working 24 hours a day, this has worked for me,
Yeah.
being a perfectionist, it's all worked for me. What they don't realize is the toll that that takes on you, not just mentally and physically, but when you have the imposter syndrome, you play yourself so small, you don't even ask for a raise because you think, "Oh, I'm just so happy to be here. I don't
Mhm.
wanna rock the boat. I don't wanna demand my worth." And so
Right.
whatever pennies drop from the table, you're like, "Okay, well, thank you." And you go home and you're like, "I can't believe that they,
Right.
gave me this and blah, 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 blah."
Mhm.
But you don't but in your mind, you're thinking, "I'll just work harder and I will show them." You just walked away from money, you know? So what I try to do is help women see what their behaviors are and then what toll that takes out on their lives, right?
Mhm.
And then we get to the limiting beliefs. What are the
Mhm.
beliefs that you have about yourself? And then we do the reframe on those beliefs.
As you were talking, I was just wagging my head because, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. And I know there's folks that are going to be watching today. But as you were talking, I was thinking about the exhaustion that comes with trying to fulfill this because it's never ending. It's a
Mm,
cycle. As you mentioned, you keep going, you're trying to work harder. you're trying to prove them, you're gonna show them.
Mhm.
And if you do it one time, you gotta do it again, and so it's
Absolutely.
like this hamster wheel you're on.
Mhm.
How does that impact the women that you work with, their personal lives? Because I can only imagine that it trickles down into their personal lives
Yes.
as well and their
It
family.
absolutely does. It affects everything. You're not just physically tired, you're mentally and emotionally drained. You just don't have the capacity by the time you
Mhm,
get home at the end of the day, you just don't have the capacity to give any more to, your partner, your children. You just don't have it. And so everybody kind of limps along, right?
mhm.
And you do the best you can. The worst part about this whole cycle is that your daughters watch you. And so
Yeah.
when you're going 24/7, when you're trying to people please, right? They're watching you. When you
Mhm,
come home drained, they interpret that as, okay, well, that's the way it has to be. That's how my mom was. My mom worked all the time. And
mhm.
and and she was tired, and I guess that's what I have to do as well. So it's
Mhm.
critical, not just financially and for your physical and mental and emotional health, for you to recognize this and to stop it, but you gotta realize what you're passing on, the messages that you are passing on to your children, and those are
Yeah.
messages that you don't want to pass on. I remember my nephew. I don't have any children, but I remember
Mhm.
my nephew. We were just talking, and he said, "When I grow up, I'm gonna have a good job." And so I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, well, this is the time when he's gonna say, 'You have a good job because you work in TV and blah, blah, blah.'"
Right.
And so he said, "I'm gonna have a good job, not like you." Hold up,
"Excuse me?"
hold up, because this not good job I got pays for some of these vacations that we go.
Yeah.
And I said, "You don't think I have a good job?" And he said, "No, you're always tired and you don't have time. You don't have time to for me. You don't have time for." And
Mhm.
I have 2 sisters. His mother is the middle sister, and then I have a younger
Mhm.
sister. And I was in the race to be the favorite. So,
Yeah.
that's what I didn't want to hear. And that was a gut punch for me.
Yeah.
That really broke my heart because he's the only child that we have in the family, and,
Mhm.
I didn't want him to feel as though I wasn't present in his life.
Yeah, and, when I was going through your bio, and I didn't even, I mean, I could have went on for about 20 minutes because of all your accomplishments, and I asked you the question about success, and it struck me when you said you didn't enjoy the highs, you didn't enjoy those periods. I'm gonna ask you now, do you feel like you're enjoying the highs now in your life? And if so, what changed for you?
You know what? There was a time in my TV career where I thought, I'm going to, become a real estate agent because
Mhm.
in my mind, I thought that's gotta be the easiest job in America. You go
Yeah.
there, you give them your money, they take you, "Oh, yeah, I like it," and they get a commission, right? And every place I went to, like, I've been at 13 stations across this country. Every time I dropped, I bought a house, and I sold a house, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I went into real estate in 2008, 2009,
Mhm.
2010, just when the economy was imploding,
Yeah.
and it was a horrible time. And, I kept thinking that if I just work harder, I'll be able to hold on. But really, as a rookie, there was just no way for rookies to hold on because
Yeah.
the implosion was so severe. And I ended up losing everything I had. I lost
Wow.
everything I had. I lost my house.
Mhm.
I lost my car. I didn't have any money because I kept thinking it's gonna turn around and I'd use the savings and everything. And
Right.
so my house went to foreclosure.
Uh,
I had to declare bankruptcy. I ended up moving out of this, like, 6,000 square foot house on several acres into a room,
mhm.
in my sister's basement, and I ended up, getting a job in a gym, a tennis gym, uh, and I made 7.50 an hour.
Wow.
So I was totally stripped of everything, right?
Of
And
everything.
that moment changed me, you know, deeply. Talk about
Yeah.
grief. I was grieving everything. I never, ever thought something like that would happen to me. I
Yeah.
never thought I would not be able to go to a store, a grocery store, and not be able to afford anything, right? Because I
Mhm.
mean, and I was too proud to say to my family members, "Can you help me out?" Right? So in this whole process, I remember being in the house before I had to get out. I remember having, crackers, peanut butter, and jelly. And I'd
Mm,
say to myself, "Okay, for breakfast, you're gonna have crackers, peanut butter, and jelly, and then for dinner, you're gonna have crackers, jelly, and peanut butter." 'Cause
mm.
that's the only thing my mind was like, "You gotta," you play
Make
games.
it different. Yeah, make it different.
And in that moment, it changed everything. It changed how I saw myself, right?
Mhm.
I didn't see myself as a success. I saw myself as a failure. I saw
Yeah.
myself as, weak, you know? All of the horrible things you can imagine that you will say to yourself when your eyes open at 3 a.m. and there's nobody but you and you know?
Mhm.
All of those thoughts come. So I really look at success differently
Yeah.
and how, I clawed my way back in, but I look at success as, do I have time to be with me? Do I have
Mhm.
time to be with my nephew and my family members? Do I have time just to not have this mental wheel that's going on saying, listen, you better watch out for this, you gotta do this, make sure you do this, blah, blah. You know what I mean? All those gymnastics. I don't
Mhm.
have to do that. I don't, I was in charge of the morning show, and so I would get up at 10 o'clock the night before and I'd get into the station, I'd do prayer and meditation, I would watch the 11 o'clock news, I would drive into the station, I'd get there by 1 o'clock, 1 AM, I'd work all night, after the show was over, I'd start planning for the next day, and I'd leave sometimes at 1 p.
Mm.
So, I was kinda like 4 hours of sleep, you
Yeah.
know?
And
And
that
so
was
I look at it differently now, and I I enjoy the little things.
happiness is different. It has a different meaning for you,
Yes.
and that had to be so challenging because I just keep going back to that part where you were saying, you weren't able to enjoy the highs, and then you go through this really difficult time where it's like your whole identity is like
Mhm.
questioned for you because you're like, wait, I was doing this. I didn't even really get to enjoy that part of my life the way that I wanted to, and now I'm facing this. And so hearing you now talk about how happiness has a new meaning and joy has a new meaning for you is just wonderful to hear, and the work that you're doing to help women who are stuck in that place. I want to ask you about rediscovering yourself because we hear that every new year it's like the new me,
Mhm.
the new you. What
Yeah.
does rediscovering yourself actually look like after you experience a major loss like you described?
Well, I think when you suffer a loss, whether it's a job, a career, or someone you love, it shakes your foundation. It shakes
Mhm.
who you see yourself as. I have a friend who's going through a divorce after 30 years. And what she says to me is, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? My routines are different, right? I can't, what do I do? Right? And that happens after you lose a career. You're like used to getting up and getting dressed and being around a lot of people. And so all of that gets stripped away and, you know, you're left wondering, who am I? What am
Mhm.
I doing? Was this all worth it? Would I do this again? And so I think when people suffer a loss, it can be a time of awakening,
Mhm.
right? It can awaken you, or you can keep going, trying to maintain, the life that you've had. But
Yeah.
really, it's an opportunity for you to sit down and assess where you are. What's working? What doesn't work? What do I believe about myself? At my core, what do I believe? Who am I? But more
Mm,
importantly, who do I want to become?
yeah.
I'm not that person anymore. Who do I want to become? And if you don't stop and ask yourself those questions, then you go back into that cycle
Mhm.
and then you start all over again. After my bankruptcy, I went back into the cycle
Yeah.
because it was all about achieving, su- first surviving, sustaining,
Mhm.
right? But when I sat down and looked at my TV career was on life support, right?
Yeah.
I didn't wanna face that because who was I? If I didn't
Mm,
have a title, if I wasn't, Miss some bada bada, then
yeah.
would people even respect me? Would I respect me, right?
Mhm.
And I just remember being in the conference room and my boss was giving me another assignment that I thought was just so I just didn't have the bandwidth for it. And in
Yeah.
that moment, I could hear my mom saying to me something she always said to me, which was, "Bet on you, Connie. Bet on you." And in that moment, I decided I would no longer do this. And I
Uh,
wrote a resignation letter that took me 2 years to turn in because in the 2 years, I was deciding, like, who am I? What
mhm.
kind of life do I wanna be? What do I believe about myself? And I had
Mm.
a lot of limiting beliefs.
What is the first step in really reclaiming your identity? And I love what you said and what your mom said about betting on you,
Mhm.
because a lot of times we attach our fate and our identity to other people, especially to jobs,
Yes,
right? Feel
yes.
like, oh, they let me down, or they didn't promote me, or they didn't do this. What's the first step towards taking back your identity?
I think you have to sit down and take an assessment of where you are and what's important to you, right?
Mhm.
Where are you in your life? What's working, what's not working, right? What
Yeah.
as I said before, what do you believe about yourself?
Mhm.
What do you believe about yourself? I believed that I was a poor writer.
Yeah.
Listen, limiting beliefs don't have to make sense. You
Mhm.
just have to believe them. Do you believe you're too old? Do you
Right.
believe you're too young? Do you believe that if you're black you can't succeed? What do you believe about yourself? Where are you in your life? Right?
Mhm.
You have to you have to stay take stock of where you are before you can start to reinvent yourself, to reclaim
Mhm.
your identity. Is that even the identity that you want?
Right.
Maybe it isn't. But
Mhm.
unless you sit down and do some deep thinking and deep introspection about where you are and who you are, then you're never going to know that. Right? And once you decide, here's the kind of person I want to be. Here's the kind of life I want to have. Then we do the work. We get down to the real work. But first of all is identifying what do you believe and what do you want? And when I ask women, what is it that you want? They don't know
Yeah.
because we have been caregivers and
Mhm.
taking care of everybody else's needs that we just don't know who we are and what we like. I remember when my nephew went off to college, my sister was like crying in the grocery store and people were coming, "Are you okay?" And she discovered that, you know, for all these years, she was the soccer mom, she was the football mom, and all that was getting ready to be stripped away from her because he didn't want her to going off to college with her,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so she that season in her life, ended, and that's one thing that we have to really remember. We have seasons in our life. You aren't
Mhm.
meant to be in one season forever. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that that season was bad or
Mhm.
wrong or you made the wrong decisions. You can honor that season in your life and look forward to another new season in your life. And the
Yeah.
best part about looking forward is you could build the rules. Build the rules
Mhm.
in your new season. What's acceptable? Like I said to my friend who's going through a divorce, I said, you're now on your own. So
Yeah.
you cannot be the bank to your
Mhm.
your relatives. You cannot
Mhm.
be, you can't do all of the things that you once did. So now you have to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And
It
you
gives
have
you
to
permission,
Yes,
permission to live.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And we often don't give ourselves permission to leave, to
Yeah.
live or to think outside the box. We
Yeah.
don't give ourselves permission.
I want to thank you so much for this conversation, Constance. And before we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find you, how can they connect with you, and the support that you have available.
We can't get to everything in this conversation,
Yes.
although I think we had a great conversation. I have a YouTube channel,
Yes.
Constance Howard Executive Coaching, and I go in every week. I talk about issues that empower women, right? And how you can change the direction of your life. So YouTube channel, I'm on LinkedIn as
Okay.
well, and I'm on Facebook as well. But if you reach out to me on any of those platforms, one platform, you can get to me to all the other platforms. But I'm on every Wednesday at 11 o'clock with my YouTube episodes.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure to have all that information down in the podcast description so folks can find you. And I thank you so much for just this discussion. Like you said, we could talk for hours
Yes,
about this. But thank you for being transparent, for being vulnerable, for sharing your journey, all of the work that you're doing with helping women build confidence and courage and those tools that sometimes are not always instilled in women
yes,
and have
yes.
to take it because they tell us we can't own it, but we have to take it. And you're helping women to fulfill their purpose. And I really appreciate having you on today. And I want to ask you just one final question before we go. Looking back on your journey, your experiences, what is one of the lessons that you've learned that you want to share with others?
Um, look, can I give you two?
Yeah.
One, have the courage to uh, define your life. Have
Uh-huh.
the courage to be able to say no to what does not sit well in your system.
Yeah.
Um, Once you learn how to say no, it sets a whole different tone for the conversation.
Uh-huh.
So that's number one. Number two, faith.
Yeah.
I just would not have been able to make it through the bankruptcy and all of that stuff if it wasn't for my faith, you
Uh-huh.
know? There were times when I was really angry at God, for all of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I look back and I think, um, he never left me. He never left me, and he never leaves you. And I
Uh-huh.
think with that foundation, you're able to face whatever, comes your way, the ups and the downs, right? But
Yeah.
you need those 2 things. You need to be able to say no, and you need to
Mhm.
be able to go to God and pour out your heart.
Don't go through it alone,
Don't
definitely.
go through it alone. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much, Constance. It's been a
Thank
joy just
you.
having you on today, and I'd love to have you back. I know you're going to continue to do great things and support others, and thank you so much. And audience, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another new episode of the Lived Experiences podcast.
Thank you.